You know, it's interesting. We give you information on this channel based on what we feel and what we've experienced will help you and will actually help you. And that's what's critical about this channel versus a lot of other hunting information, digital content creation, whatever it might be, is we're not driven by any sponsor, any kind of agenda, anything like that. And in fact, this right here, what we've done for the last few years, we pull a red cedar in, we trim it up so it can be rubbed if they want to rub it, and a lot of times it is, and then we put a mock scrape on it. And we did that just because we do it in front of all our stand locations. We'll talk about why. But now we got to this point in the year, it's November 28th, and we thought, you know what? Let's tabulate how many bucks, how many does, how many scrapes versus rubs, so we can deliver it to you guys. Because we could put a rubbing post in a location like this and show a video of big bucks hitting it and rubbing it, but is that what they really want to hit? And likewise a scrape too. So this was set up perfectly for both. We recognize that and wanted to give you the opportunity to see the differences. So Jen created a spreadsheet with all this, with all these hits. And so she went through from September 29th all the way to November 28th. So we're looking at an entire 2-month period during the heart of hunting season so we could relate this. I want to go through these quick numbers for you. Out of this, total rubs since September 29th, we had 22, meaning 22 times that a buck came and made a rub. Total scrapes during this period of time, there were 210. So imagine her thumbing through these pictures, looking at all and picking all these out for scrapes versus rubs and just trying to get the information. She looked through thousands of pictures. Rubs, bucks and doe, of course, they were all bucks that made rubs. You don't have does and fawns going up and trying to make a rub, but she did say there were between 5 and 10 does that came up and sniffed the rub. Maybe they even left some preorbital gland scent. I don't know, but it doesn't show them doing that. It shows them actually just nose to it, sniffing it a little bit, and that's about it. Now on the scrape, on the other hand, this is interesting. This is one of the reasons a scrape is set apart from a rub in the value to you and the attraction overall. Bucks versus doe. Out of those 210 scraping events, separate events, these weren't multiple pictures because we usually get 3-shot burst or 2-shot burst. So you might get a buck making this all at the same time. That we just counted that as one. So we had hundreds of pictures of those 210 scraping or multiple pictures of rubs too. But bottom line is 64 bucks out of 210 scrapes, 64 buck scrapes. 64 times a buck, it's individual buck. Does, 146, think about that. Antlerless deer hit that mock scrape 146 times. 64, so 3 times more that a buck came in and made a scrape than he actually made a rub. Fawns accounted for about 50% of those doe hits. I would assume a large percent of those were button bucks, but there were fawn does that were hitting that as well. So between fawn bucks, fawn does, bucks in general, big and small, 210. Bucks, 64, does, 146. About half of those, we didn't tabulate fawns versus does. Sometimes it's hard to tell, but about half, just by size, were that. Interesting, best days, October 11th, there were 14 hits. 11 of those were scrapes, so that means 3 rubs on that day and 11 scrapes. Pretty cool during a 24-hour period. October 26th, there were 11. 6 of those scrapes, that means 5 buck rubs during that day. It's contagious sometimes. November 4th, there were 9 scrapes. That was our 3rd best day, and all 9 were scrapes, or 9 events, all 9 were 9 scrapes. Why? Big difference between a rub and a scrape. Rubs are typically hit 1 time a year. In this case, it's out in an active area on the edge of a food plot, edge of corn, edge of greens. So it's going to be hit by a lot of deer. And it can be very misleading because you go out there and see this big, beautiful rub that looks like it's been hit a lot, but really it's been hit 22 times that we show, that we have pictures of anyways. Not saying that something else didn't hit it right after within that time frame of the camera being set off, but that would relate to rubs and scrapes both. You know, that let's say there were double the amount of rubs because it didn't record another sequence within 3 minutes because that was a time delay on the camera. Well, that's applicable to the scrapes too. So you'd have double the scrapes or triple the scrapes. You'd have more scrapes based on that ratio. Bottom line is all sexes hit the scrape. They all make a scrape. They go through the process of leaving their preorbital gland on the licking branch. If it's done with a vertical licking branch hanging straight down and it's low enough for fawns, we put them in the middle of trails. We put them by all our stand locations. This happens to be within 25 yards of a setup. that we have in an oak tree nearby. We do that because it's right by the scrape, right by the stand location. So very important, all sexes will hit that, and they use it 365 days a year. There'll be deer, bucks, does in general, fawns, hitting this scrape in February, in July, in May, all during the entire year. It's the same with if it's on a trail. They're all within bow shot of a stand location. They're all on trails or edge of a food source, so we can take a census like we do here in inventory. The bottom line is, it's hit by all sexes, a scrape is, a rub is not. It's at 365, a rub is not. And it holds a lot of scent. So think about all the scent that a fawn leaves, a doe leaves. They all leave preorbital gland scent. And so when they leave that scent, then it's very attractive. What's different with a scrape versus a rub will, let's say you make a rub in the woods next to a stand, you make it with a rock, you make it with a stick or a piece of bone. Well, guess what? When another buck walks by and they're going that way anyways, they're going to stop and sniff it. But they're not coming from 30, 40 yards away and defining all their trails to it all season long to go by this rub all year long. With a scrape, they are. So it's a big difference, and the amount of scent they accumulates. We've had bucks for the first time walk into a scrape from 30 yards downwind, and they'll just walk right to it in the dark. Maybe they see it. I don't know if their eyes are that great during the middle of the night. The bottom line is they smell it and they go right to it, and they leave their scent and they move on. It's a mark. It's a sign of communication, where rubs traditionally in the woods are hit 1 or 2 times and that's it. In this case, it was hit 22 times, but on a food source in the middle, on the edge of that food source in the middle of high quality food. So very important to remember. So again, lots of scent left on it. All sexes participate in the scrape. And when that happens, and it happens 365, then you can imagine all the trails go to that. It's right above the trail. It's right in the edge. So they're always going to hit it when they go by, leave their scent, and that becomes an attraction for other animals. Now, I'm not trying to cause a debate between rub, scrape. That's not the point. The point is, again, going back to the beginning, I want to deliver good information to you. And this is a study we did without knowing we were doing the study. We're just looking back and saying, hey, this is what happened. But this is consistent with any other rub-scrape combos. Not that they never rub. It's just that in this case, it's about 10% of the time. That shows the priority of scraping versus rubbing. Not to say we couldn't put a fake rub somewhere by a stand location or on a food plot and get activity on it. But what do deer really want? They want that scrape, and that's the way they communicate all year. What does this mean to you? What do you do about it? What we do about it is, for many years, I put a scrape at every stand location. It all goes together. 3 things at a stand location: where you hang the stand, where you can put a camera potentially, whether we do or not, and where you put a mock scrape, which is what we always do. So that's important to have by every stand location. We like a vertical branch because it hangs right over the trail where we expect bucks to move through, or as they're hitting a water hole. And then the accumulation of bucks, fawns, does hitting that scrape over and over again leaves a lot of scent. It becomes a high form of attraction, and it pulls the movement from other trails nearby to that exact location right for a bow shot. And what's cool about that is when they come in, they're not paying attention to you. They're looking at that scrape. They're not paying attention to the camera. They're looking at that scrape. You can pull back, draw back, great for young hunters and old, but you can actually get a shot a lot easier. And so we recommend to use them at every scrape. One of the first things I did here, and Dylan will remember this back, I think we were turkey hunting, and it was at the end of turkey hunting. We had a rake because I'm in my turkey hunting clothes, and I don't even think we owned the property yet. It was in May, light vegetation. And one of the first things we did is make a mock scrape on the property in a location and stick a camera on it. That's one of the first things I'd do anywhere on any private land. And I'm putting those in locations I expect to kill a buck in November and October, not where I think they're at during the summer. That is of no use. I want an area that they can, when they come through a spot during the hunting season, they're familiar with that scrape and they'll hit that every single time. That means when they come through in June or July, I don't care where they're at in their normal summer patterns. I want to make sure that, hey, this looks like a good spot to shoot them in November. I want to scrape there by a stand, so when they come through, even if it's just very infrequently during the summer, they know where that's at, and that sets the table for hunting season later, months later, often weeks later, on an attraction that they'll hit 365 and is open to all sexes, and they can leave a lot of scent. And we have that vertical branch, hangs waist high, belly high. And check it out, we have over 50 mock scrape videos on the channel. They're in our playlist. You can check them all out. We talk about the same strategies over and over again, how you make those flat surface waist to belly high, 6 to 8 foot, even a 9 foot vine, depending on where you're at. Sometimes 5 foot if there's low overhanging brush. We hang them by a 30-cent piece of paracord. Sometimes hang it between 2 trees on a rope. If there's no branches, you can basically hang this almost anywhere you want, exactly where you want it for that mock scrape, for the camera nearby, and for the stand location. I thought this was a pretty cool study. Jen actually spent a few hours, made a spreadsheet on this, and broke it all down for us. So big thanks to her for doing that. The bottom line is, it wasn't real eye-opening for the amount of occurrences. It was eye-opening for the number of occurrences over that 2-month period. You know, this is at a spot towards the front of the food plot where we expect to be able to get a shot. We can't walk all the way through a two acre plot. I don't want to have the mock scrape in the back there, because then those deer, if they want to hit this and they're attracted to it, they could hit that, not even go into the plot, not even give us a bow shot, and just go off the plot. We have this at the other end where we have switchgrass, screening, corn, where we can get in and actually hunt that and be hidden and get out of there. And you want to draw them all the way across the food plot. We don't really care if you even hit it at night. We want them to hit that, give us an inventory, and move on. And this is a really cool study. I hope you guys appreciate it. It's something that can really offer some helpful information as you're going through to plan what you need to add on your property for attraction, for inventory of other bucks, does, fawns in this case, and really some enjoyment of where you want to put your cell cameras, your cameras, and watch deer. And in this case, watch deer 365/7. I urge everyone out there to really check out my web classes. They've been wildly successful. We have one that details how you should design your land, another one that details how you should plant and maintain and manage a food plot program. How can you make those decisions that fit your land specifically and not someone else's? Unfortunately, there's so much information in the hunting industry that says you should do this, but it doesn't apply to you. These web classes directly apply to you. And then we have our 3rd web class that came out last year, Rut Web Class, navigating the entire rut. And then we have our 4th one coming out, which is hunting hills and thermals. I urge you to check those out, try the web classes, and they're all about teaching, helping you understand how you can navigate, not only managing your property, food plots, and the rut, but also hunting strategically, hills, thermals, and wherever you pursue whitetails for your dream and your passion.